Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. Joined now by Mike Gill from 97.3 ESPN down the shore. Mike, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, brother?
Doing all right. A little late night Flyers for me. I'm a little tired today.
Oh, yeah, they got to win that game. Each Cobb gets 2 goals, and you can't get it out the win, Mike.
Yeah, I couldn't believe. I actually didn't make it through overtime in the whole game, but it was 2-0, 3-2 when I went to turn it off. I couldn't believe. I woke up. I said, "How do you lose that game up 2-0?" And but you were bound. That team, Edmonton had been 0-3.
Yeah, that team's good. They're a good team too. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sure most people here have no idea what we're even talking about.
No, I'm going to lean. I don't know what you're talking about, but I got to lean on you guys for the hockey knowledge. Hockey's the one sport that I don't know that much about. I have to do research. I used to have to cover some Flyers playoff games. I'd have to do so much research just to pound something out that made a modicum of sense.
I get the people like yesterday, the Phillies have a press conference and, they brought Thompson back, which was a kind of a lightning rod of a decision. And we're talking about this. And we're getting text after text after text. We must have had 150 texts in the first half hour of the show. And some random guy says, "Hey, no one wants to hear about the negativity of the Phillies. Why not talk about the Flyers?" And I'm like, listen, I could be the biggest hockey fan in the world. The problem with hockey is it's just not a second-guessing sport. That's why football and baseball are such radio-friendly shows like this, is because there's so much second-guessing. Hockey just doesn't have the second-guessing. It's not like, hey, you should have left that line on the ice for an extra 30 seconds. It is what it is. You could talk about the backup goalie or the goalie is a convert, but there's not a lot of second in-game guessing like football, which reads shows like this.
I love the game. I grew up playing it, so it's a lot of fun for me to watch, and I do love it still. But I understand what you're saying. It's definitely not as radio friendly for sure.
Yeah, just not like, I guarantee if there was more second guessing where you said you played it. Not a lot of people played hockey, so they don't have that feeling. Like we blame the coach for everything in every sport. Fans love to blame the coach. Why? Because they feel they could coach these sports. They played at some time in their life and feel that they have enough ability to do the job. Most people never played hockey, so they don't know what the coach even does in hockey to second guess or say, I could do a better job than John Tortorella. But I guarantee there's 98% of people watching this show right now that think they could do a better job than Nick Sirianni.
That's true.
Yeah, you might have lowballed that 98% at this particular time.
I think we have a couple realistic people in there.
Well, I hope so. But I will say, I'm not the hockey expert, but those guys seem to get as much shit as anybody else. I mean, the Flyers go through coaches like socks.
Yeah, John, the Flyers are not a good organization.
Well, I
did not grow up a Flyers fan.
Well, to be fair, it's not just the Flyers. It's hockey. For whatever reason, they fire the coach and go from hard ass to players. They flip back and forth in the middle of seasons all the time. Well, I was having this discussion yesterday. Colin Thompson, who played in the NFL, you guys know him, but for the listener, he played and he was on the team that fired Matt Rule in the middle of the week 5.
Yeah.
What it's like to go through a coaching change at the NFL level, because people want Sirianni gone. Okay, what's it like for the players to have to go through that? And his answer really was, it depends on who gets elevated to that job. That's a big factor. So many times, you say, why did they pick the offensive line coach or the quality? Like, it's not usually the biggest name guy that gets elevated to the head coaching role. Sometimes, it's just a random guy on the staff that all the players kind of like, who's not going to change a whole heck of a lot of things. Like, if Sirianni goes, you might not say, well, they're just going to elevate Kellen Moore so that everything changes the way that Kellen Moore wants it. They want to try to keep it as much the same.
It's interesting you bring that up, Mike. For some reason, we were walking back from talking to coordinators, and I said, if they fire Nick Sirianni, which they're not, so don't get too excited, Nick Sirianni haters.
You think they're happy that their game got flexed out of the 425?
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that. Yeah,
Yeah, right, yeah.
certainly not a positive for either team, to be honest, the Philadelphia Eagles or the Cincinnati Bengals, but positive for John McMullen, so I like it. But I said if you wanted to go, everybody, I've even gone back and forth and say, well, I'd hire Vic more than Kellen because Vic's been a head coach and all that kind of thing. But the guy I'd really hire is Michael Clay. I mean, you talk about a smart freaking guy. And if you go through, there was a while in the COVID era, or when you didn't have your coach for a particular reason, almost always the guy being elevated was the special teams coach. And the thought process behind it was that's the only other coach that talks to the entire team during the season. So he's got a feel for the entire team versus, and then you don't want to have upheaval on the offensive and defensive side. So that's the thought process behind the short-term elevation of the special teams coach. But he's a great communicator. He's just a natural sort of with people, just in that aspect of it and dealing with them, which is big when you're a head coach. Nobody talks about the special teams coach anywhere, not just Philadelphia. And of all places, Philadelphia should know because of John Harbaugh, the one guy who sort of has taken. Now he got to spend a year as a secondary coach at the end of his term here, but longtime special teams coach. And he's done obviously a tremendous job. I would go with Michael Clay. That's what I would go.
Well, it doesn't help that he had a field goal blocked, a punt blocked, so his special
No,
teams
I
aren't off
get
to a
it.
rip
I
roaring
get
start
it.
here.
But as Nick said, actually overall, they've had 3 catastrophic plays. But my major point is they play pretty well overall, consistently with the catastrophic plays. And by the way, again, you know, there's a lot of ways to pick up teams, but again, if you don't run run out of bounds on 2nd 1, if you don't give up a sack, you're not taking a 57-yard field goal with Myles Garrett on the field.
Yeah.
So everybody contributes to that as well. But I'm just talking the communication aspect because I think that's the biggest.
Yeah, I think I always ask the question, the hot coordinator seems to be the guy who gets the job. I said, but what qualifies him to be the leader of 53 guys? He might be a brilliant play designer or caller, but that doesn't mean he's qualified to run an entire locker room of offense and defense and special teams. So I think a lot of times we see these, hot coordinators. Robert Saleh was this, great defensive coordinator, but he was not a great head coach. We see it so often that teams always pick the guy who seems to have the hot scheme at the time or had the really good season as the head coaching hires come. But how many of these guys end up making it as great head coaches? So I think you just got to find the right, and that's what the Eagles hope or think they have, is the right motivator, the right guy that the players want to play for, that's more important than what scheme they're running now. The problem is how much of this, people who don't want Sirianni, you're not bringing in someone from outside the organization in week 6, 7, 8, 9. It's going to be, if they fired Sirianni in season, they're just going to elevate someone who's already here. Right. So this whole thought of they're going to bring in Mike Vrabel or Bill Belichick in the middle of a season, if that's what you want Sirianni for, so that they go and get one of those guys in season, that is not happening. You are getting either Vic Fangio or potentially Kellen Moore to kind of get elevated to that head
or Michael
coaching
Clay.
spot. Maybe
I'll go as far as to say it's going to be none of the above because I don't think Lurie's going to move on from Nick mid-season.
No, Nick's not getting fired, but yes.
I don't either. I'm just saying to the people who want that to happen, who are wanting it to happen because they think the result will be a Bill Belichick or a Mike Vrabel because they're available. You don't fire a guy in season and bring a guy outside and just say, hey, come and coach this team as is right now with no training camp, no nothing, and implement. When has that ever happened?
Bringing in a completely new guy?
from in the middle. Somebody get fired in season, and the
I'm
coach that
sure.
replaced him
It's
was
definitely
hired
happened. I mean,
from outside.
that's a really bad way to go about it. But
That's
I
got
mean,
to be the worst way. You go through all of training camp, all this prep, and then in week
yeah,
6, you're bringing in a whole new name.
that's
I
probably
don't
the most.
remember it happening. I don't
That's
remember a time where that has happened.
Well, technically, Jeff Saturday. I mean, he was close
There
to
you
the
go.
organization, but
True.
he was not doing anything as far as coaching. That is the sign of a terrible organization. I mean, just terrible, beyond terrible. Or if you do something like that, so yeah, that you're right though. That definitely is not going to happen. And the only way Nick Sirianni gets fired at this point is if he goes into Jeffrey Lurie's office and does something completely, out of character, and he wants out and makes
And
it.
by the way, I would say Jeff Saturday was basically brought there to make sure that the organization didn't crumble. Let everybody do what they've been doing. You just be the guy who's in charge here. They're not bringing in a guy who wants to come in and implement his offense, his defense, all that stuff.
No, absolutely. And I would never advocate anybody, even the New York Jets.
Yeah.
Look at the way they played. How many penalties in that game? Just completely unprepared. It's dumb. It's dumb. That's something you do in the off season.
But all right, so this conversation seems to be leading to: are we coming to terms with? Are we making the judgment that this Eagles team is who they are, and there is not more growth to that next echelon of team? Because right now it looks like this team is a middle of the pack at best team, and that's not what we thought we were getting.
I gotta think there's more growth with this team. Like, I gotta think that there's more. I mean, you got 2 new coordinators coming in this year. You've had 5 games on the season. You have this roster on, at least on all the offensive side, that on paper is stacked. I gotta think that there's more growth with this team. I gotta think it. Now,
I do not think they're a Super Bowl contender. I think they're a playoff level team. And I think there's going to be growth. I think they're going to be better. They got a chance to have a little run here because of the schedule.
Yeah, okay, so they just barely squeaked by Cleveland. And I'm not one that cares about the aesthetics of a victory. Okay, you won to that point, Nick is right. You won in the NFL. That's hard. I talked to you, John, about this. The disconnect between the fans and the team is the fans look at the Browns as a team that is not very good. The NFL organization, coach, franchise says it's hard to win in this league. So they look at it as, we won a game in the NFL no matter what it looked like. We got the job done. The fans are saying that's not good enough for us. You beat a team that we, the fans, don't deem to be quality enough for that performance. So no one's going into the Giant game saying, we're better than the Giants. You're now looking at these games not like we're saying, well, they got a schedule coming up. You're saying, well, the Giants have a good defense. Well, if you're the Eagles, you should be better than the Giants. Not they have a good defense. Who gives a rat's ass about their defense?
That's true, than they are. But to your point
that's the point is, that's where we are, John, where you're legitimately worried that you're not good enough to beat the Giants. You're looking at a Bengals team that has really struggled this year, and you're worried like that offense still has a lot of talent. If you're at the point where we're better than that team, I don't care that that Bengals team is not very good.
And to, Cleveland specifically is about the quarterback, nothing else. And, the quarterback has played badly. The best player on the field from any team, and everybody would tell you, was Myles Garrett. I mean, they couldn't even block Dalvin Tomlinson. People in Philadelphia probably don't know who that is unless they remember him from his days with the Giants. The Eagles don't have a pass rusher like Zadarius Smith. And by the way, he's the second best pass rusher on the Browns because they have Myles Garrett. You saw Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Did the Eagles have a linebacker like that?
No, the Browns defense is better than Philadelphia.
Is a better cornerback than any of the Eagles cornerbacks.
Yeah.
As you heard Nick Sirianni raving about him, he's one of the few players that his kid can buy a jersey of.
I was dying for him to give me a mediocre player's name. I wanted it so bad for him to say, I wouldn't let my son get the a jersey of, and he was like, oh, I can't say someone's name.
He was thinking
that
of
was just a goofy thing to do, but I agree that Denzel Ward is a good player.
But my point is, because fans think the Browns stink.
Right, but yeah, the fans can't separate that the Browns stink, but they have a really good defense. That's the problem. So this is where you have this battle of Sirianni saying, we won the game. It's really hard. And the fans saying, I don't care. It wasn't a quality enough win. You don't look like a team that I can believe in. And because of what happened last year, you won 10 games and they were all these clunky, ugly wins. And you were like, we're winning. And then the wheels fell off. So I think there's a little bit of that remembrance of, I don't care that you were 10-1. They were ugly wins. And then you completely fell apart.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, and Zander said it, and that's fine because he's speaking for most of the fan base. Like, they think this talent is way better than it is. I mean, they have tremendous talent on the offensive side of the football amongst the starters. You already saw it with AJ, Devontae, and Lane, the downtick when you got to go to the depth. You can never replace players like that, but the Eagles have bad depth. There's other teams that have decent depth, and nobody has great depth. But now you're going to see it with Jordan Mailata. We're talking about, well, can he persevere with Brett Johnson? Do you have to move Mekhi Becton? Do you have to put Tyler Steen in there? Dallas Goedert. Grant Calcaterra showed up for one game, had a career game. Grant Calcaterra ain't Dallas Goedert if Dallas is forced to play. And people think they don't want to see Darius Slay. A lot of people, not everyone. Boy, they're not going to enjoy it when he's not out there. I can tell you that. Might not be this week because of the limitations of the Giants offensively. But who knows if Malik Neighbors is back? He's tough to deal with.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think the depth on this team is good at all. So basically, you're talking about an 11-man group that is really talented. And then from there, you could argue they're a below average team talent-wise.
Yeah, but is it just the fan base that over? I mean, John, there was like every national.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
I try not to speak for every fan. I mean, I think everybody's got their own opinion.
Well, yeah.
I just speak the best I can with what I know. But I don't know. I feel like I wasn't the only one that came into this season like, well, damn, this is a pretty good roster.
Because people focus on the splash players, and the Eagles have a lot of splash players.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very fantasy football mindset that, when you have good skill players, that puts fear into, you go back to when the Detroit Lions were drafting wide receivers in the first round year after year after year. And you're like, man, they got Charles Rodgers and, all these guys, and they never did anything because their offensive line. The Minnesota Vikings have been going through that for years. They had Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson, and they had all these high flying.
Yeah, we got great lines too, guys. I mean,
that's what to me is the confounding part about this is that you have an offensive line that teams in this league would kill for, and you are still this offensively. Now, the problem with it is it has been blurred by the fact that you did not have your full group of guys for multiple weeks playing together. So we really haven't seen what the offense should look like. But with that offensive line, you would think, man, we should really be able to dominate.
That's the thing. And by the way, that's when Detroit took off. They have a great offensive line.
Their offensive line is elite right now. And that's the big difference between what they do. Because we were talking about this the other day. Are Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Jamison Williams, would you say, man, they're way better than Brown and Smith? You might like them more, but they're not, And would you say I would take Montgomery and Gibbs over Barkley? You might prefer them, but you wouldn't say it's a definitive. Where the definitive lies right now is their offensive line is getting it done, man, and they're creative in the play call. You are not creative in the play call. And your offensive line has not performed to where you expected it to.
I got to bail out the offensive line a little bit on this conversation. All right.
Oh, the
I
Eagles'
agree that
offensive line is
Detroit's offensive line is probably top in the league right now. But are we going to sit here and say
I'm
that the
not going to
Eagles
say. I'm not going to say
the
the
Eagles'
lines.
offensive line isn't playing good enough, or is there another variable there? I mean, Jared Goff and Jalen Hurts are very different style of quarterbacks. Jared Goff's style probably lends better to using an offensive line like that and getting better results than Jalen Hurts, who's constantly rolling out or on the move or moving away from that offensive line. I don't know. I don't think I can put all that on the other.
What I'm saying, Zander, is the Eagles do have a good offensive line. They are not doing a good job. I say this all the time. Brown and Smith, we perceive to be the stars. Barkley's a star. No. The star of this team should be and has been the offensive line, but they are not utilizing the offensive line as the star. They're trying to make other stars shine brighter. Your star is your offensive line. Detroit has said, you know who our star is? It's our offensive line. You know why it is? Because they are nastier, tougher, and they will beat the crap out of you. And then when they beat the crap out of you, the rest of their stars can shine the brightest. You know why? Because the other team is mentally beaten. You watched it the other day. They ran the ball and pounded that team.
Yes,
and then when they finally pounded them, they said, you know what? We're going to have some fun with you. And we're going to start showing how diverse we can be on offense. But they know who their star is. Yes, they have Ra and Jameson Williams and these great running backs. But their star is the nastiness of their offensive line. And until the Eagles figure that out, this offense is going to continue to be, in the words of Lane Johnson, constipated.
I swear, sometimes it feels like they're doing it backwards. You come out of the box and you throw 3 go routes, and I'm like,
you are one of the few teams in this league that has the ability to utilize something that not many teams have, and they don't want to use it. They want to keep
built
thinking
better. The Detroit Lions,
thinking that they are, they remind me of like the Raiders in the 70s, that they have to throw the ball down the field, and that's the only way to matriculate yardage in this league. They have their offense so ass backwards with what they have, and this is why it's a clunky mess.
Yeah, I mean, because I think the Lions are the best team in football, and we'll see. I mean, defensively, now they have issues with no Aiden. That's big loss. That is a
huge loss.
That is a season-changing loss. So, but right now, with Aiden Hutchinson, they were the best team in football in my estimation. And you talk about offensively specifically, and their offensive line. I don't know if it's better than the Eagles, and it might be just as good. It might be, but they haven't.
I'm not saying talent-wise it's better. I'm saying it's utilized better.
I agree. It's utilized better. If they lose Decker, it's Decker, Glasgow, Ragnow, Zeitler, Sewell. Sewell's the best right tackle in football, but he's the superstar, Sewell. Zeitler's really good. Ragnow, I've been saying for years, I used to tell Jody, nobody knows who he is. He's better than Kelsey. I used to whisper.
Yeah.
He's been banged up a lot, but when they're healthy, but if they got to play Dan Skipper, the famous guy, that, Coyote Awasika's been in there. He can't even make the Eagles. So I don't know if they're better, but I think they're utilized better. And by the way, it's the same thing with the quarterback and the running backs. Is Saquon Barkley more talented than David Montgomery? Hell yeah. Is Saquon Barkley more talented than Jahmyr Gibbs in a well-rounded skill set? Hell yeah. I'd rather have that combination. I'd rather have that combination.
Yeah.
Well, I'd rather have the combination the way that they're using them. If you told me that the Eagles skill players were being used in that offense, they're going to have unbelievable seasons. It would be an unstoppable offense. And that goes to like the play design and the play call. This is where this offense is not conducive to the talent you have. You're saying to me, it looks like the Eagles are saying we have Jalen Hurts, and that makes us great. We're just going to throw the ball down the field and hope that the receivers can go one-on-one, which they can, but you're doing it every possession. You're taking a shot down the field every possession. We saw what happened in the game the other day. The ball's at the 45-yard line. They took the snap. They threw it to the 40. That's 5 air yards, and they scored a 45-yard touchdown. Why? They got the guy moving in motion. They let him catch it on the run. And then in the society that we live in, nobody wants to communicate. So the two idiots didn't talk to each other in the secondary, and you have free flowing. Number one, no communication on any secondary in the league. Number two, if you haven't noticed, Eagle head coach and coordinator, whoever's calling your plays, nobody can tackle. So throw the ball short and let A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith make people miss. I got news for you. Nobody can tackle in this league. Nobody. And yet you're trying to take shots down the field all game long. It is a gross misuse of all the talent you have. Throw the ball short and make people miss. It's a pretty simple concept. You know why? Because I watch it against you every week. You can't tackle. So why do you think anybody else can? It is unbelievable ignorance by this team's offense with the talent they have that they can score 20 freaking points in a game with that offensive talent. I don't care how many snaps you got in preseason, training camp, anywhere. The talent that they have by blind ignorance should score 20 points.
John, is this an organizational philosophy? Because me and John have talked about this so many times where the Eagles, they just want to pass the ball, Mike Gill. And what you're saying makes so much sense to me, but it goes against everything I'm told that the Eagles organization wants to do.
Well, I mean, yes, it is an organizational philosophy that you pass to win. You pass to get the lead, and you run to close out a game. Basically, is the philosophy, and that's not just Philadelphia. That's the vast majority of the league, including Detroit. By the way,
I don't know. Man. Detroit imposes their will.
When things go well. And who knows? That's the best game of the week. And unfortunately, it's at 1:00 the same time as the Eagles. But Detroit's going into Minnesota. You got Ben Johnson, the wonderkin against Brian Flores. The great matchup. And you're going to see somebody get exposed. I don't know who, but you're going to see somebody get exposed to a certain degree. But I think, as I said, with Aiden Hutchinson, I think Detroit is the best team in football. But yeah, I mean, they're good running the football, and they're good running the football because of their offensive line. But make no mistake about it, Jared Goff is an MVP candidate. He's the first guy in NFL history to not throw an incomplete pass, and they're constantly throwing the football down the field. Mike talks about some of this stuff. Look, that's a staple. That's a staple here. They don't execute it, unfortunately.
No, they don't. No, I mean, you know what they do? And listen, this might be the quarter. I had you on yesterday, John, and Kurt Warner brought this up. He says, I'm watching the Eagles pass concepts. They're the same that they've been the last 3 years, regardless of the coordinator. So he's saying maybe it's the quarterback. Maybe it's the quarterback who can't do the things that Kellen Moore wants him to do, and that they're confined to this little box because of what the quarterback can do and can't do. Well, they can't run. Why? Detroit, they get up under center, they play action, and now, wow, just imagine the linebackers in the corners are looking in at the running back, and they say they might hand the ball to Saquon Barkley. Now, if Saquon Barkley's standing to my right, he can't get downhill, he can't get moving. I'm not all as worried about the play action with him. And then you get the ball. Amon-Ra St. Brown catches the ball in the middle of the field probably 3 to 4 times a game, and he just makes people miss. When you do those things, you are now giving so many different options that the safeties and the corners have to communicate on that messes them up.
I mean, you can point to Jalen Hurts with it, but I think they're also setting him up to fail. I mean, you could take the best passing quarterback in the league, and the way they're doing it with Jalen Hurts would make it an uphill battle. You come out and you throw go routes 4 times. I mean, they're letting Jared Goff get into the football game. As you mentioned, Mike, imposing their will with the offensive line, with their 2 running backs. They're making this impossible on Hurts, and Hurts isn't even a passing quarterback. This is a recipe for failure for the quarterback. And I'm critical of the quarterback. But they're also making it way harder on him.
Can I say did this organization have the greatest stretch in history of 91 years playing this style of football, or did they not?
Yeah, but John, are they regressing since that point?
Well, sure, but a lot of that
Okay.
has to do with, and they got to figure it out. I'm not saying that, but to say it can't succeed, that's what you already saw it succeed.
Yeah, I know,
But like
John, things change.
the people that say put Jalen Hurts under center.
Oh, I'm not saying that.
I mean, my God, what are we talking about? Here's the thing, and this is going to.
I'm not saying that you should, but I'm saying is that limiting what you can do offensively because that's not his strong suit.
Limiting Lamar Jackson with Derrick Henry? Do they run the football? No, it's not limiting you. You just got to do it a different way, a different style, a different way.
They also don't have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in their arsenal.
Now, here's my point. When they wanted to run Jared Goff out of Detroit and they were 0-8 or whatever the hell they were, when Dan Campbell, they wanted to run them both out of town.
Yeah.
If Jalen Hurts was on that team, they're probably 4-4. When you have everything perfect and everything is in situated, you got the great offensive line, you got the skill position. I'd rather have the Jared Goff style quarterback than Jalen Hurts style quarterback. I admit that. I'd rather have
what we have right now, right?
and that's gonna piss people off. But everything's got to be perfect. Everything's got to be perfect. If you're 0-6 level talent, you're going to go 0-7 and 0-8, and you're going to keep losing and losing and losing because that guy's not going to make plays for you. Whereas Jalen Hurts can do some different things and make plays for you.
Sure.
So
I mean, Anthony Richardson can make plays that Joe Flacco can't. Guess what?
Exactly.
I'll take Joe Flacco. That team's winning with Joe Flacco. Anthony Richardson can make a ton of plays, but that's just basically saying I have a lesser talented team, and therefore I have to utilize talent to mask.
Well, the point is you have to utilize the talent you have. And that's what the Eagles are trying, and that's why it looks similar with Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen and Brian Johnson and Kellen Moore, and it'll look similar if you want to fire Nick and Kellen Moore and get somebody else next year. It'll look similar if you hire a good coach, because good coaches are trying to utilize the talent they have to win a particular game. Right. That's why it looks similar.
And this is where I go back to the talent that they have that they're underutilizing is their offensive line. That's the talent that they have that they're underutilizing because they don't put enough value in, hey, we have the guys up front to win this game. You know, when Detroit beats Dallas, it's because they kicked their ass up front. Dallas is just beaten and whipped. So therefore, you can do everything you want because you utilized your biggest asset. Yes, Amon-Ra St. Brown is awesome. Jamison Williams, dynamic. Their running back tandem, great. But why? Because they have the ability to win up front, and they utilize that ability. Jared Goff's not great, but guess what? He can become great when you have the disposal of everything you want. And the Eagles want to almost force feed what they want to do at the beginning of a game, and now they're behind the 8 ball all game long trying to just get that first down or that first score because they don't want to be, hey, we're going to take the ball and we're going to – believe me, John, you know me. I'm not some 1995 turn around and hand it off to Emmitt Smith kind of guy. But most teams in this league don't have what the Eagles have. They have an offensive line that they can ride. And now with the injuries, that changes probably a little bit. But this is a team that had no business being in the playoffs 3 years ago, I guess now. No business. They got there because they decided our offensive line is the star of this team. We're not good enough to be a playoff team, but if we utilize our best asset in this league, we can win. And that team stunk, and they won 9 games because they knew what their best asset was. This team right now, their best asset is their offensive line, and that opens up the assets that they have that are amazing assets.
Well, I would argue if you go back to the 2-5 start in 2021, it had more to do with not utilizing the offensive line. It had to do with taking they felt they they felt they put too much on Jalen Hurts' play too early. So again, it was all trying to take advantage of the quarterback skill sets. And
Well, when I
that's
talk
where,
about the offensive line too, real quick, John, I'm saying their asset is as a run blocking, nasty offensive line as opposed to pass blocking. That, most teams don't want to pass block. That's not your strength. Detroit's strength is run blocking, blasting you off the ball, and then that just wears down the pass rush.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to turn Jalen Hurts into Jared Goff because he's never going to be that. But there's got to be some way to find a middle ground to do what Mike is talking about while not taking Jalen Hurts and putting him under center, because I understand that's not going to be your best recipe to win. They're coming out and they're throwing go routes right away. I mean, it's big play or bust for Jalen Hurts right now. It's got to be tough to succeed.
You can go, you can fire the coach after the season, go hire Clay Kubiak or whoever the hell is Kyle Shanahan's right-hand man. I think it's Clay Kubiak.
I wonder if it comes from upstairs, John.
And go get a play-action quarterback, and you can go play like the 49ers. You can go try it.
I'm not saying to do that. I'm just saying there's got to be a gray area that's better utilizing Jalen and the offensive line and the running game and the whole collection of talent that Mike is saying.
Yeah, it's getting the quarterback better at the things he's not great at, and they've been trying to do that pretty consistently. But to the point of Kurt Warner, and I'm glad Kurt said it because I've been saying it for weeks. Look, there's a theme here. There's a theme here, and the theme isn't Nick Sirianni. The theme is Jalen Hurts. Nick Sirianni has already changed offenses multiple times in his coaching career. Back in Indianapolis, from Andrew Luck to Jacoby Brissett to Phillip Rivers to here, first year, 2-5 to start, where they're throwing the football all over the place, trying to turn Jalen Hurts into this superstar player, to scaling it back to what Mike was talking about, making the offensive line the star. He's already changed offenses multiple times in his coaching career. But if people have that GPS program, they're getting there. It's got to do with the quarterback, not Nick Sirianni, not Shane Steichen, not Brian Johnson, not Kellen Moore. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because the quarterback's a good player and they won a lot of football. And if they're 6-2 3 weeks from now, I think everybody's going to be fine. But they're trying to build an offense.
It depends on how those wins look. You know how it works. If they win 20-16 over the Giants and 17-7 over the Bengals, and you're still looking at offense, you're saying ultimately, okay, you're winning these games, but can you beat? I can't believe we're saying this. The Minnesotas, the Washingtons, the Detroits, the San Franciscos.
I can't say that they'd be wrong, though. I mean, because look at what happened last year. You went 10-1, and then you collapsed once teams caught up to you, figured out how to play you. I mean, you got to the playoffs. The Bucs made you look like a JV team. Everybody blames the defense. We scored 9 points in the playoff game. You're not beating the Panthers with 9 points on the board. Well, so if the wins are ugly, and you do get to 6-2 or 8-2 or 10-2, I'm not going to criticize the fans for being like, this isn't going to work, because we're going to get to the playoff teams. And as you just pointed out, the Minnesotas, the Detroits, the better teams in this league are going to look at us and they're going to blow us off the page.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say you're not winning against Carolina with 9 points. Not with Andy Dalton playing quarterback. Why? Because he can make the basic plays. He can make a simple play. That's where this team right now, they just can't make a simple.
I feel like the dam is breaking. I just right now, just across my feed, Fran Duffy used to work for the Eagles, the film guy. Now he works for PHLY, wrote, Jalen Hurts consistently attempts throws that have a low probability of completion. Why? What makes these throws harder than others? And why is it a consistent theme year after year, despite changes in the booth coaching staff? Everybody's talking about it now, all of a sudden. It's been so obvious. As Vic likes to say, and I always say, it will become obvious. It is so obvious. People are finally waking up to it. Now, you utilize the players you have. If you're a good coach, if you're a bad coach, you try to turn Jalen Hurts into Brock Purdy. I don't know what,
Yeah, but
the
here's my
quarterback's got to
question,
get better.
Here's my question for both of you, because I agree, you're not going to turn Jalen into Brock Purdy, nor should you, and it's dumb. It would be dumb to do that. Is there a better way to do this using Jalen Hurts' skill set than what they are doing right now? There must be, in my opinion.
Yes, there's clearly a better way to do it.
That's what they got to find. I'm not trying to turn them into Brock Purdy,
but that's what they're trying to do every freaking day. Do you think they want them
doing
audible?
that is by launching go routes from the first play of the game.
Who launched the go route?
Is it Jalen?
Yes.
Hey,
Well,
listen.
then he needs to lose some of that autonomy he wanted so badly.
Yes. Kellen Moore, who says nothing. You guys can talk and I'll try to pull it up. He says nothing ever says nothing. I'm going to read you his answer about the 3rd-1 play that ultimately turned into the sack and created the 57
genius.
Yeah. The 51-yard touchdown. He said it there for everyone to see. He's so, boring, and people look over it and they don't pay attention. But he acknowledged it was an automatic. It was an audible. Same as the end of the game. One was unsuccessful. One was successful. Maybe, it's a very difficult thing to do when you have a quarterback who craves this autonomy and he's making wrong decisions.
Yeah.
So here's what Kellen said.
What did I tell you yesterday, John? The play was a terrible decision. It's a low percentage play, but it worked. So no one's really bringing it up. Whereas in the other game, Barkley dropped the pass and they're getting killed for it. If he catches that pass, everyone thinks it's a great call. That call down the field on 3rd and 1, if that pass, which is low percentage, is dropped, the clock stops, and you are probably talking about a game in which you just coughed up. Now, maybe not with Deshaun Watson.
So here's what Kellen said. Obviously he's protecting Jalen as much as he can. We just missed from a protection standpoint, and they did. That was a bad job by Saquon. Had somebody running down the middle of the field. That was Devontae Smith. And so felt like you're only going to get 1 or 2 of those. And those are sometimes those automatics. That's an audible in coach speak that sit on the menu and you're waiting for the right time. He checked out of the play.
Yeah. Hey, I don't disagree with that. Like I said earlier, they had a play. They had the ball at the 45-yard line. They threw it 5 yards and they scored a touchdown. Jalen Hurts has to come to terms with it's not about him. It's getting the ball to these other players. They spent a ton of money on these receivers. Utilize them in the best way possible. Shooting them down the field once every possession, every time you get the ball, it's not getting it done. So just say 1, 2, 3, bang. There you go, Smith. You make the play. It's like they have to score a 50-yard down the field touchdown. They scored a 45-yard touchdown by throwing the ball 5 yards the other day. That's your play right there. That's their play.
I agree. Simple mesh route, and they took it to the house. Instead, we're going on go routes all damn day. I'm wondering. So I don't know. Maybe it is more on Jalen Hurts. I mean, I think part of it is on Jalen Hurts. I'm just trying to bridge the gap. Like, there's got to be a better way. But if Jalen Hurts is continuing to audible out of the better way, then
the game is about setting something up down the line. And if I run that mesh route early in the game a handful of times, that throw I make later on down the field is a lot easier to make because now I have everybody thinking they're going mesh, I'm going mesh. It makes it a more difficult play to go down the field if that is your first option all the time. And if you're unwilling to take the second option underneath, they very rarely go that route. But when they have, it has worked for them.
Yeah. But the Kellen Moore isn't calling go routes on 3rd and 1. If people don't understand that, I can't help them.
Yeah.
Jalen's got to be smarter than that.
He's smart when it works. It's worked a lot. over the years.
Well,
Those
as we talk
shots
a
they
lot
take down the
about,
field.
John, with everything, Vic Fangio's defense worked a lot, and then teams started to do more studies and figure it out, and then they do things to now do things that make that defense what used to do things really well. They've changed their ways. So teams look at what the Eagles did well, and they say, this is what you used to do well, so we're going to put a defense together when we play against you that takes some of that stuff away. You have to be able to evolve and do different things. So it's not to say, hey, every play has to be a mesh play. Of course not. I mean, eventually that gets taken away.
Yeah,
but if you are showing an unwillingness to do that at all, it makes what you really want to do much more difficult.
And by the way, the third one was also the play that Nick Sirianni took credit for to take over the play calling for those worried about that. And then you have the offensive coordinator a couple days later explaining the whole situation. He's trying to protect the quarterback when he says, I took that out. He's trying to protect both.
Yeah, way more people are latching onto those words than I thought, John. I was reading, around on YouTube, watching channels with, thousands and thousands of views. And I'm like, geez, they all really think that Nick called the defensive
They all think it. And that's why I don't know why Nick does it, but
yeah.
Well, I do know why he does it, but I don't think he realizes that people are taking him at his word.
Yeah.
Instead of just bowling on the sword. Yeah, I mean, the quarterback changed that play. You can go back and watch it. It's evident on the field. Just go back and watch it. The quarterback's changing the play right in front of your face.
All right, we got to let Mike get out of here. We went long, but this is an interesting conversation and one that is scary to look in the face because you wonder what the hell is the answer if these problems are what is existing right now in a team that's really loaded with talent on the offensive side of the ball. So, Jay Perfect, thanks for the 99 cents, brother. Mike, great stuff, man. Appreciate you doing it. As always, you always get us talking, Mike, and that's why we love you. Make sure you guys follow Mike at Mike Gill Show and listen to him when you're down the shore, 97.3 ESPN. Download their app. Check out their website. Mike does a great job for them. Mike, thanks for joining today, man. We'll talk to you again soon.
See you guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Great stuff from Mike Gill. He always makes us think, and I love that. I thought he brought some great points today on the show. We're running out of time before BLG. We'll get to him. John, any last touches on that topic? I'm sure we'll get back into it with BLG a little bit because that's an interesting one, but I thought Mike said some good stuff. I thought you said some good stuff too, but it just highlights this problem. And it's like, okay, well, how do we fix that problem? Is there a fix to that problem? and then if you're an Eagle Negadelphia fan like me and you stare it in the face long enough, you're like, holy shit, are we fucked, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, well, it depends on your definition of fucked. But, for the people that think that they're a Super Bowl contender, I think that's not the case right now. Doesn't mean you can't develop into a Super Bowl contender. It's better to get, play your best football late. But right now, the Eagles' way to win is to out-talent people. And that's really their way of winning before when they did have the run. And I just don't think the talent is where it was before, at least from a depth standpoint. And then when you start the injuries, and now we're talking about injuries again with Jordan Mailata, Dallas Goedert, and I'm talking about the offensive side of the football. But as far as the scheme and that type of stuff, I mean, I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking they fucked themselves because they're paying too much deference to the quarterback.
And when you say that, you mean they're giving them too much autonomy?
Not only that's part of it, but part of it is that they want to make him happy. Yeah, similar to the Sixers with Joel Embiid. They want to make him happy. And that's not how you run a team. No offense to your personal happiness, but this is bigger than you.
Yeah, well, listen to fucking Tom Brady. You want to be happy, go to Disney World with your family.
Well, yeah, I wasn't thinking of Tom, but yeah, what he said about that, he got fired up about that. Yeah, it's you shouldn't be changing third one plays in that situation. Shouldn't be doing it. Should be getting the first down, extending the sticks, and then maybe something works. You put yourself and that now that's a footnote. Imagine if they lose that game. They're coasting. They're probably going to get a field goal. It's probably going to be 13-3 against Cleveland, against an offensively limited team. You're probably coasting to a win because Saquon was a bigger part of that than Jalen. But that was a poor decision that put Saquon in a position where he made that mistake. So there's a bunch of butterfly effects going on here.
Right.
And imagine if they lost that game. Now it's just a footnote. That was one of the worst sequences in recent Eagles history. That end of half that resulted in the Myles Garrett blocked field goal.
It was brutal. It was brutal. Let's get to our commercial break. Great conversation there with Mike Gill, Johnny Mack. Good touches on it there. We're going to talk to BLG. I got to hear what BLG is thinking on this, because this is some interesting stuff when you're talking about this offense, Jalen Hurts, the autonomy at the line, and all sorts of stuff. So we'll get into that coming up next. Brandon Lee Gouton. Appreciate everybody being here on Birds 365. Hit that like button if you're here on the live chat. Appreciate all of you guys. I see a bunch of people in there as always. So thanks for that. Let's get to our commercial break. Before I do that, BetUS, everybody, our newest sponsor here on Birds 365, sponsoring us for the football season. Check them out. You can look at your screen now, and there's a big promo code on the screen, YouTube 150, and that gives you 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, and then you get 125% on your second and third deposits, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. They have the fastest payouts in the industry, 24/7 customer support, and you'll even get your own custom account manager to help you make your bets. So go check them out today. Happy to have them sponsoring us here on JAKIB Sports. We'll be back in 3 minutes, everybody, with BLG from Bleeding Green Nation.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.